thank you very much for inviting us for the cage match today. I am Ronnie Bluer of Idera Corporation, and today I'll be talking about SharePoint Migration Suite. After my brief talk, one of our engineers, Chad Dove, will show a live demonstration of our SharePoint migration solution. So, Chad, okay, so just a brief background on Idera. Idera has been in the Microsoft systems management market for about 10 years now. We have a wide range of products for both SQL Server, server backup and recovery, as well as a dedicated product line for Microsoft SharePoint. The solution coverage that we have for Microsoft SharePoint includes not just migration, but performance and availability and diagnostics, backup and recovery, security, auditing, and compliance. And so we definitely believe that as part of any Microsoft SharePoint implementation, that customers should take into consideration their other security, automation, and migration needs. So with respect to Idera SharePoint Migration Suite, there's a couple of things that we believe make us stand out as a solution. The first of those is that we have very comprehensive coverage of the types of data that can be migrated into and across SharePoint environments. This includes not just contents and file system data, content from SharePoint farms and file system data, but also things like site level objects, site collection level objects, and other more complex forms of content that what we have found typically give customers the most pain in terms of effort and time spent in their migration project. In addition, our solution uses an agentless architecture. This is very important because we do not require software to be installed on the production SharePoint environment to use it. So it makes it a lot easier for customers to install, try, and use without having to go through a change control window for their environment. And finally, one of the key things that Chad's going to be showing as well is that the Idera SharePoint Migration Suite includes tools that allow you to gain continued value in terms of making your information better organized within SharePoint, your content more accessible and more searchable, and also to simplify the process of migrating data from your development environment into your test environment and finally into production, and doing so in a way that's not disruptive to your end users. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chad so he can run the demonstration.
All right, thank you, Ronnie. All right, so as Ronnie was saying, the Migration Suite is an agentless solution. Now, if you're really looking to maximize performance, what you can do is install this on your target web front-end server, utilize some alternate access mappings, and that way you're just eliminating the network hop altogether. Within the Migration Suite, it does consist of three core components. The first component that we'll start with will be the Info Architect. Now, within the Info Architect, it consists of two modules. The first module, you can kind of see here in the background, will let you assess with what you have at a site collection level and give you that visualization of your taxonomy. So, great assessment tool to really connect to that top level and let you know what it is you're working with. But you can also use these diagrams to reorganize your overall taxonomy and also modify the different properties at the site list and library level. The second module to the Info Architect is really the same concept, except it's really going to be focused at the overall architecture level for your content types. So content types, columns, managed metadata services, and even the different parent-child relationships in between the content types. The second component of the Migration Suite is the Content Organizer. That would really be used to manage content in place for a particular site, whether you're tagging items with metadata, or maybe just using the tool to merge lists and libraries, or manage the overall content, whether it's in place or from a migration from a list-to-list or site-to-site perspective. Where the Migration Manager comes into play would obviously help you with migrations from 2003, 2007, straight into 2010. would also be used in content deployment type scenarios to help you move content from, say, dev, QA to production. But let's go ahead and get started with the info architect. And as you can see, we're connected here to my accounting site collection. Again, I can quickly assess everything I have within this particular site collections, including all of my subsites and the list and libraries. Now, pre-migration, a good way to connect to that top level and assess what it is you're working with. Even from a redesign standpoint, if you want to kind of reorganize in place in 2007, definitely a handy tool, but even kind of looking after the migration, great management tool for your day-to-day administration tasks. For instance, if you were to get a call from somebody in accounting asking you to maybe move the charitable donations website from under accounting and move that under taxes. Now, without having to jump on a SharePoint server and run your SDS admin import-exports command, all I have to do is click on these different parent-child relationship links, and you'll notice down here within the properties, I can define a new parent location. So for that, once I click on taxes, I may come up here and close out my diagram, and even though I click yes to save my changes, those changes aren't affecting SharePoint quite yet. So whether it's part of an approval process or you just want to come in and give it a second look, once we go into that site map, you should notice the taxonomy is updated. So once we're comfortable making those changes, all we have to do is come up here to our Info Architect tab and click on our Synchronize with latest version of SharePoint to push out all of those changes at once or a change at a time. And as I said, other than using it to reorganize your taxonomy, you can definitely use it to modify all of the properties here at the list library level. Same if you wanted to use it to build out new site collections, which would be a real-time action, whether you're at that top site or any one of these sub-sites. You can perform a right-click, click Create Sub-Site, define the title, URL, description, and then specify a template, and that's going to create that site for me in real time. Now, the second module of the Info Architect is really the same concept, except now we're really focused at information architecture level. So not only just your content types and columns, but it also supports managed metadata services from two different areas, from a manageability standpoint and from a deployment type scenario. And other than just using it at that architecture level, you can definitely use the Info Architect to modify the columns and content types that are already applied to the local list and libraries and maybe modify those local attributes. But from an overview of maybe redefining this architecture from 2007 to 2010, this is something, again, you may want to just use for an assessment before you start making your changes, something you may want to also print out to your plotter, scribble all over it, get it figured out as a rough draft, and then once you're ready to make your changes, you can just, you'll notice over here to the right, I can quickly create new columns, whether they're out-of-the-box columns, custom columns, and all I have to do to apply those to a content type is really click drag and drop. And as you see, once I define that column, I can then name the column, modify the properties. Same with creating pre-existing columns. So instead of using that 2 or 3 step process in SharePoint to create that pre-existing column, again, all I have to do is click drag and drop to associate that column with the particular content type. Now, if you do have a governance committee that maybe has to approve these types of changes, and instead of confusing them with all of the different SharePoint lingo and parent-child relationships, it may be easier just to save this off as an image file. Of course, once that's approved, you can then use that same process that we did within the sitemaps to synchronize all those changes at once, or maybe a change at a time, by coming up here and clicking with latest version of SharePoint. You can also use the Info Architect to manage your different term stores, and as I said earlier, really 2 types of functions when it comes to the term stores. One from just a day-to-day administration standpoint, to where you can definitely connect to your term stores, and instead of using the SharePoint interface and clicking the next button over and over again, you can quickly create a new term store. One nice tool here that saves a lot of time would be the bulk create terms, which would really allow me to just create as many terms as I'd like by separating them by hitting enter to find that new line there. Then from a second scenario, it really helps you from a deployment type basis. If you're not using a hub, whether you're coming across from different farms or different site collections, you'll notice here for each term store or really anything associated with MMS, I can perform a right-click copy and then, of course, a right-click paste in my maybe production farm or a different site collection altogether.
Chad, you got a 5-minute warning.
All right, excellent. So we'll talk a little bit at high level here as far as the migration. Now with the migration, even though it's called a migration suite per se, it's something that's going to definitely help you out with your migration, but then also from a day-to-day standpoint, maybe from a development lifecycle or content deployment type scenario with moving not just site collections, subsites, list libraries, and items, but even down at those lower object levels. So if you created a new workflow in your dev environment and just wanted to bring that into a production library, you definitely have that level of granularity to really just click, drag, and drop that particular site list, item, or object from one location to the next. Now, whether you're performing a migration at a site collection level or sub-site level, all of that is really a click, drag, and drop, or right-click, copy-paste approach. You do have some tools here within the ribbon that really specify what type of migration you want to kick off, whether it's a sub-site, my site, site collection. We even support promoting sub-sites to site collections. As we all know, some of those 2007 or 2003 farms have kind of grown out of control. Content databases of a couple of hundred gigs. Now, with a scenario like that, all you would have to do is click on that particular sub-site and then use your ribbon here to promote that to a site collection. As far as the lower levels of SharePoint, lists, libraries, items, you can definitely expand into the different areas here. Use that same type of approach to click, drag, and drop from one location to the next. Specifically with lists and libraries, even when using it as a high-level type migration, we support both out-of-the-box workflows and SharePoint Designer workflows. And as you'll notice here within the wizard, with each migration job I can kick off here from the wizard, I can also generate a script, take that script and tie it to a scheduled task to really just automate that process. And then from a content deployment scenario and also from a migration scenario, I like to use the live compare feature. Now from a migration type scenario, I like using the live compare feature as more as a QA tool. So once you kick off a migration, you of course want to go in and give it a second look, make sure everything's in place, and with that you can define both your source location and maybe your target location here within the live compare feature and run a comparison for all of the objects associated with that particular site. But then also from a content deployment type scenario is something I can definitely use to maybe do a list-to-list, library-to-library comparison or merge list and libraries, or even use it to move over a certain configuration at that list library level, whether that's a maybe configuration for versioning or maybe it's a custom column you created here at the list library level and just wanted to move that local attribute from one location to the next. And as you can see, column groups, content types, permissions, web parts, and even using it to kind of manage your term stores and give you that side-by-side view here. Now with that, if I were to expand on these different areas and see those differences, not only can I see those differences, but then I can copy those over from one location to the next.
2 minutes, Chet.
All right, and I don't think I can throw in any more features under 2 minutes, so that's about all I have. But thank you very much.